And it was all a bad dream. Good morning, hello, and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for the episode of our Raw Reaction series and our Arsenal transfer show with episode 103, with mere weeks remaining of the transfer window for us to improve the squad, change it, try and make it better as to what it was before. Yeah, it wasn't great last night, was it? Let's be real. A lot of criticisms, a lot of things that you would definitely change. And one thing in particular, I think a lot of people would certainly change. But we're not here to talk about the game, really. We may touch upon it. We're mainly here to talk about the transfers and what could still change between now and then. Sorry, I'm just moving this over because otherwise you get a corner of the green screen. It's not in screen. There we go. So let's first kick off, of course, with saying that I hope you had a good evening despite the game and enjoy the rest of your weekend, of course. And if you could drop a like on the video, I would really appreciate it. And if you could subscribe to the channel if you're new, that would also be fantastic as well. We're on our way now to 27,000 subscribers. So keep hitting that subscribe button if you could. And if you'd like to continue playing and trying to predict what Mikel Arteta or whoever will be our manager for the rest of the season, to have a go at predicting what they're going to do for each game, have a go at the Arsenal Predictor game from the Arsenal Review from Pick Your Team. Link is in the description. Our next game is, of course, against Chelsea, and we've got to somehow try and predict what team is going to be put out against the Blues. We will cross that bridge certainly when we reach it. But without further ado, let's go on with the news for today. And we start with, of course, the news that Joe Willock has indeed left the club. You probably saw this yesterday. Arsenal have made a figure of around £25 million for the young England youth international. And I really hope that this is one that doesn't come back to bite us. I'm not going to wish him loads of luck, because if he goes away and smashes it, it's not going to look particularly great, and we're going to regret selling one of our players. It does very much, to me anyway. I get the feeling that had we have been able to move on others in the team, your Nketiahs, your Nelsons, your Torreiras, your Maitland-Niles, these guys, your Bellerins, we probably may have not sold Joe Willock. But it seems that we are so desperate to bring in some money that we had to part ways with a player that we didn't necessarily want to part ways with. And we definitely could have done with bringing him off the bench last night. That is for sure. But he is now gone. Now, Lucas Torreira did decide that it would be quite amusing for him to then tweet a picture of him away with friends during the game last night. Still no links in regards to kind of guaranteeing a departure. The Lazio kind of rumours are still there. But it was a very poorly timed tweet, and certainly one which is not going to enthuse the fan base, let's say. It is a very frustrating one to try and have to deal with, and for the club to have to deal with. It's not a great look. It's not great for him. It's really frustrating, in fact. And I'm not surprised if you were a little bit peed off by seeing this tweet go up yesterday during the game. But he certainly is trying to push for a move away, it seems. Has absolutely no care about Arsenal in the world, that is for sure. And we'll be looking to move on as soon as feasibly possible. To where? We don't know. Now, Alexandre Lacazette was linked with a move to Roma, and with the situation between Roma and Tammy Abraham still unresolved. However, there were reports that Abraham is becoming more convinced about the possible project of playing under Jose Mourinho. Alexandre Lacazette's links with Roma have pretty much just moved away. Sky Sports have said that there is very little truth in Lacazette's links with the Italian side, and it is likely that he will remain with the club this season. I've kind of maintained that I don't think the striking department is the main problem, although it's very hard to say that considering we were missing our two main strikers last night. I still think it's very much down to the chance creation. But Lacazette coming back in, hopefully for the Chelsea game, will be a bit of a boost if he has indeed recovered from whatever this is. If it is indeed an illness. That's what we're told, is that him and Aubameyang were ill last night. No links or transfer rumours have emerged since. Nothing controversial has emerged since either. Only the conspiracy theories. That is it so far. In regards to players that could possibly join the club, one that doesn't look very likely now is Dusan Vlahovic. In fact, Atletico Madrid have reportedly submitted a €60 million bid to Fiorentina to try and sign the Serbian forward. Of course, they do still have Luis Suarez and João Felix. But adding Vlahovic would definitely add kind of that long-term replacement that Suarez, when his 1 year that's remaining on his contract, does end, he would be a perfect replacement and arguably maybe even a future upgrade on the Uruguayan forward. And that would probably be a great move for Atletico Madrid. But he does not look to be a striker that Arsenal will be signing this summer. Now, Graham Potter has been speaking about the future of Yves Bissouma, the Malian central midfielder, of course, has been linked with Arsenal for a very long time with no kind of movement in this area. And Bissouma will start the season as a Brighton player, which seemed very, very unlikely at the end of the last campaign. But Graham Potter says, I seem to have been speaking about Yves Bissouma for quite some time, but he's still here. I can't control the future. Yves is with us. He's happy and smiling, and he wants to play and keep on improving his career. He's our player, and while he's here, we will do our best to help him. So it doesn't say that, he's staying. He still very much is saying that there's no control over what happens with Bissouma, and there is still time for him to move on. I'd be very surprised if Arsenal sign a central midfielder this summer. With the way that Lacazette has kind of impressed since joining from Anderlecht, I certainly think that's an area that they feel that they will have enough depth in. I would personally add one still, and if there was the chance to sign Bissouma, I would say absolutely go and do it. I just don't think it's an area they feel that Arsenal are going to strengthen in now with Xhaka staying and with how good Lacazette has been for us as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing Lacazette and Partey play together, by the way. I'm really genuinely will be hoping that is a pair that can go forward as the starting pair for the rest of the season. I doubt that it will be. I very much expect Mikel Arteta to choose Granit Xhaka over Lacazette when Partey is fit. We'll see. Last story is the big one, and it is that Martin Odegaard does look very, very likely, in my eyes anyway, that he will be moving to the Emirates this summer. His future at Real Madrid is pretty much over, and Arsenal, according to Football.London, are expected to make an offer for the player, and he has pretty much made it aware to the club that he would like to move on. It's one that I know will split people. People would have got very happy about the idea of maybe James Maddison joining Arsenal this summer. That's not very likely now. But Martin Odegaard is a player that I think improves us, is better than what we currently have in an attacking midfield area. Because if you look, we've got Smith Rowe and then no one really. And so Odegaard adding quality to that area is going to be key for us this season. And yeah, it's not a mark. I was going to say it's not a marquee deal, but I think it maybe has the potential to turn into one eventually. I don't think it's a statement signing. I think Maddison probably would have been a statement signing just because of the extra context around that situation of taking Maddison away from a Premier League club, being homegrown, all of that jazz. Whereas Odegaard, of course, has already been at Arsenal for 6 months, which I look at as a positive. He's transitioned. He's proven himself in the Premier League to a certain degree. I think there's a lot more to come from him. I think if you look at his statistics, especially his creativity, it's brilliant. The passes into the box are insanely accurate. The passes into the final third are accurate. He's a very progressive player for Arsenal. He's not your sideways passing. He's forwards, and he gets into the box as well. And he does need to add a few more kind of raw stats in terms of kind of goals and assists to his game. But I would be very happy to see Martin Odegaard joined Arsenal, as I would have been with James Maddison. I don't think it's a case of one or the other. I think it's a case of if either of them had come in, I would have been very happy. And it does look like Martin Odegaard will be that player. With even a figure of 40 million euros being touted as well, only 40 million euros if you consider that's around 32 to 4 million pounds. That's a very good deal for a player of his age, quality, and what he's shown already in the league, and the fact that he's already transitioned to Arsenal and is kind of assimilated into the team already and will slot straight back into that group. So, yeah, very interesting player, very intriguing deal, and maybe one that we'll see make some big moves in the next 48 hours or so. We will wait and see. But that is all of today's transfer news. As we get towards the end of the window, there is becoming, of course, less and less. It is towards transfer deadline day that we may see some bigger movements in regards, I think, mainly towards outgoings. But that is where we're at right now. And we move on to the second part of the show, which is, of course, getting your thoughts, your feelings, your questions answered in the chat box. So if you do have some thoughts and feelings about the club or the transfer window, throw them into the chat box and we will try to answer as many of them as feasibly possible. So Magambo says, Tom, do you think Aubameyang and Laka were lied about the transfer incomings, and were told yesterday that our business is done. Odegaard doesn't count as he had no impact last season. Another panic buy. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think Odegaard is a panic buy, and I don't think it's true to say he had no impact at all. I think he's a very good player that had a big impact, seeing as our form after he arrived was the second best in the league. So to say that he had no impact after the first half of the season that we had is just simply not true. Do I think that the players were lied to? I'm not sure they tell the players too much, to be honest, in regards to kind of the way that the club's moving forward, transfers. I think they keep it very closed off at an executive level, and I don't think that they're really talking to the players. I mean, if you think about it, the players didn't really know about the Super League situation, so no one really knows what's going on at the club, especially from a player perspective. So can you be lied to if you're never told about it in the first place? Certainly something to consider. David Pierce says, why the big focus on getting an English keeper? We have several English players for the quota, and I thought Matt Ryan looked solid there last season. I think that obviously there's always the threat that the homegrown quota could increase and that you need more homegrown players in your squad. And so I think maybe they're preparing for that. I think they want to have more English players in the team for kind of the team chemistry side of things and kind of the synergy and the communication as well. But I agree with you. If it's a case of bringing in a player that improves on what we've already got, I'm not too fussed in the goalkeeping position if they're homegrown. And if there was a chance to get an Andre Onana, I would have done that. The only issue with him is the ban situation. We don't know how that would affect him and how much he could play. But I certainly think, for me anyway, that it's not a position that you really do need to push in with a homegrown factor. But that does seem what the club are moving towards. Matt says, next year Arteta goes into the final year of his Arsenal contract. What do you think the minimum he needs to do to justify a new one? Thinking about Arteta getting a new deal right now is so fanciful, Matt. It really is. I couldn't justify getting a new deal. To get a new contract, he needs to get Arsenal into the top four. That's, for me, is the minimum requirement of a coach to get us as close to or as in the top four as possible. Last season, we finished 8th. That's nowhere near good enough. If we finish 6th, you'd say that's progression. But if we go into his final year, and I expect us to, I really don't see him going anywhere. I don't think the club would pull the cord at all. I think he'll go into his final year, and if he doesn't get top four, I wouldn't renew him. But I can't speak for the club. The club seem to really get behind Arteta, and they are very much behind him. And from the feeling I get from the club is that they're very much behind him. They've bought into that philosophy. It's really genuinely concerning how much kind of responsibility there is and hanging on Mikel Arteta and his team right now. Rich says, Tom, been at work and still upset. Could have taken a loss, but to get dominated like that is just embarrassing. I was a huge fan of Arteta, but it seems his tactics just aren't working for us. Change is needed. And Rich, this is the thing. I mean, I did my show last night after the game. And I saw some comments yesterday, unfortunately, where it was a little bit rude and we had to remove some people, which is a shame. But people are allowed to change their minds on things, like genuinely. And I said at the end of last season, I think any other club in the same kind of position, that with the context of Arsenal, probably would have moved on from their coach at the end of last season. We haven't done that. You go into the new season underprepared because of both the work done by Edu and Arteta, because Arteta's the manager, so he's involved in part transfers. In my view, I think that he has some involvement in it. I think more of the responsibility falls onto Edu and the recruitment team, but he has some involvement in the decision-making and the players that they want to try and get. But we're underprepared. We don't look improved. There doesn't seem to be any kind of patterns of play there. And I found it odd that there were still comments about saying that Brentford scored their 2 chances. That doesn't matter because Arsenal never looked like scoring. So at minimum, it was going to be a 0-0, which still isn't good enough. We didn't look like scoring whatsoever during the game. We had a couple of big chances that ultimately were not taken very well. And other than Pepe's, which by that point we were already 2-0 down. So we never really made the early pressure pay. We didn't get the early goal that we needed. And to say that they scored 2 chances and one of them shouldn't have been a goal is fanciful, because the context of the game is that they only needed those couple of chances because we were never going to score. We never looked like really scoring. And so that's the biggest problem for us. Arsenal Legend says, do you feel like he's lost the dressing room? I don't, actually. I don't think he's lost the dressing room at all. I actually think there's a kind of mental fragility in the dressing room that means that he hasn't lost it, and that kind of just falls in line with what's going on. So I think a team that's lost the dressing room doesn't play like that. I saw a team playing like the way that they're being coached to play. I just don't think the coaching is the best right now. So no, I don't think he's lost the dressing room. I just don't think what they're being coached to do is very good right now. Tono says, Tom, are we overreacting to the score since it's the first match? Personally, I felt like everyone was ready to jump. Look, there are elements of overreaction in some of the responses. Absolutely, of course, as you always find. But I don't think it's an overreaction for people to have wanted change for a serious amount of time and to still want change after that game. That's not an overreaction, because you're just kind of following on from the end of last season. Very little has changed. And so why would people's opinions on whether they want the coach to change or not change? If that makes sense. How many times can you say change and it still makes sense? I hope that makes sense. MFB says, Tom, do you think we don't have leadership on the field? I think we lack leadership. Absolutely. I think there are players that are trying to show some leadership, but there is too many passengers, it seems. And there's not enough really proactive members of the team that are really gunning for things and really trying to take it. And we're very passive and we really lack. I think the right-hand side is a real concern. A real big concern, and a lot of that is down to the right back choice. And I'm not saying that Callum Chambers was the wrong choice. I think most of us would have picked Callum Chambers last night, but he didn't offer anything going forwards. Really didn't offer anything. Didn't back up Pepe. When Nelson came on at the end of the game, there was a pass that Nelson got really criticised for. Now I am very critical of Nelson, and I don't think he's at the level that he should be. But there was a pass that he made to absolutely nobody in the right-hand side of the pitch when we're 2-0 down. He did it instinctively, and he did it hoping that the right back would be there, and the right back wasn't there. And in that moment, I wasn't annoyed at Reiss Nelson for passing to no one, because he should be able to instinctually play that pass, and he should have his right back up the pitch when we're attacking, when we're 2-0 down. So the fact that he didn't have a right back available to him in that moment, I really didn't blame on Nelson. You would say you shouldn't play a blind pass, but at this level, you should have the understanding and the knowledge of when you are in a certain position on the pitch that your teammates are going to be in a corresponding place, and the right back wasn't. And so for me, that I was really disappointed in that, because that moment I think really summed up the disconnect, I suppose, between what we need to be doing and what we are actually doing. Vignesh says, considering both Aubameyang and Lacazette leave this window, will we go for two centre forwards this window or just one? I think if both were to go, which I don't think either will, we would still only go for one. But yeah, I just don't think either of them are going to leave this window. Andy Love says, Balogun hardly featured in pre-season and he starts last night. Is that a fair on the youngster? I think it is fair. I think it absolutely is. I wouldn't be critical. I'm being critical of Arteta, very much so. I'm not critical of the decision to start Balogun, and a hell of a lot of people, including myself, were very up for Balogun starting, because if you're a 20-year-old striker and you're the fourth choice and you've just signed a new contract in which one of the biggest things that you personally wanted was to be more involved with the first team, and the three strikers ahead of you are all unavailable, if he didn't start, I'd be concerned. I'd be concerned that he still wasn't picked despite those first three being out. So for me, no, I don't think that's a criticism of Arteta to start Balogun in that position when you got Martinelli, by the way, also 20 years of age, like still at the same age as Balogun. So it's not really a big argument. And he's just come back from the Olympics, you have to remember, and still started in a wide position, because Saka, of course, had a longer kind of layoff and had no pre-season, whereas Martinelli had a pre-season before he went off to the Olympics. So I'm really not critical of the decision to play Balogun. I'm also not critical of Balogun's performance, to be honest, because how can I be annoyed at a striker that's not getting any service? He had the least amount of touches of any player on the pitch when he went off, and it's unsurprising, and that's not even his fault, because he wasn't given the ball. He wasn't given the opportunity. We weren't creating chances for him. So I've said it time and time again. You could put Lewandowski, Haaland, Aguero, whoever you like, name your player at striker. They're scoring nowhere near the amount of goals that they'd score pretty much at any other top-level club. at Arsenal because we're just not creating opportunities for our strikers. So all this, like, we desperately need to sign a Vlahovic, we desperately need Martinez, we desperately need whoever at striker. I'm sorry, that's just not the main problem. And it was proven once again last night by the fact that we gave the striker no service. And that's down to a coaching problem and that's a system problem. Because Saka is a creative player. Smith Rowe is a very creative player. Pepe can create. He's more of a goal-scoring wide player, but he certainly can create. Kieran Tierney was throwing balls into the box. And, like, we just offered nothing of real quality to the forwards. So we've got creative players, and they're not creating at the level that they should be. That's, for me, not on them. That's down to the system. So make of that what you will. Aya, thank you ever so much for the donation, mate. Really appreciate it. It says, I know you share the same sentiments, Tom, but what worries me is how Arteta lacks any ideas. Give this team to a manager like a Bielsa and watch how the poor performing players become beasts. And obviously we won't know until a change, if it ever does happen, happens. I don't know. I still predict that. And my hot take of Football London yesterday in the preview for the season was that I don't think it matters where we are in the league, what position we are, what the form is, what the performances are like. I just don't see them getting rid of him. I just do not see a sacking coming at all. I just can't see it. It's just where I am on this, I'm afraid. George says, do you think Odegaard actually drastically changes our chance creation? I think regardless of who we sign the system, it won't allow it. It's a good point. Will the system restrict a creative player like Odegaard? I think obviously the statistics last season for Odegaard were great, playing in Arteta's system. And he does seem like a player that works under Arteta. So maybe that works. Maybe he can still be. I mean, if you think about it, I wrote about it yesterday. Odegaard's passing statistics into the box have got a really good accuracy. His passes into the final third have got really good accuracy too. And they're frequent. I mean, he passes the ball into the box more often than James Maddison per 90, and he's doing it more accurately than James Maddison. So I still do think that his chance creation is going to improve us, but it will still be, by definition, in my view, restricted by the system that we are playing. So, yeah. I don't know why Bielsa would leave Leeds right now anyway for us. I don't think it's a great move managerially for him. I think he's working and doing a great job at Leeds. Josh says, worried with how shaky Ben White looked yesterday. I mean, obviously I'm not going to judge Ben White after one performance. I think that he showed in pre-season, especially in the game against Spurs, how good he can be. I really enjoyed the game against Spurs with Ben White playing. I thought he was one of the best players, if not the best player on the pitch for Arsenal in that pre-season game. It is going to be across a whole season that we judge him, not over one game on his debut in the Premier League against Brentford for Arsenal. But yes, definitely, I would criticise a lot of his performance. And I really hope he does not fall into that bracket of being a good defender, joining Arsenal, and it being affected. He needs to hopefully be a player that improves the defence, not the defence diminishing his quality. And hopefully when Gabriel comes back, that'll be a good partnership. We can only hope as well, because I thought Marie was really poor. Really poor. Jason says, we will probably sign Odegaard and a sub-goalkeeper. Would that even do near enough after what we've seen last night? Again, Jason, I don't think it's about players. I think this squad is a good squad. I think we've got a decent squad of players. I think there's a hell of a lot of potential. I think that we've got some really solid, experienced players in there too. This team is better than what we saw last night. I have absolutely no doubt about that. The team could be doing a lot more than it is doing, and that you can only really point a finger in one direction when that is the case. Is that when the team that you know is better than what you're seeing, that for me, there is only one way to place blame in that sense. So it is what it is. Vignesh says, but Tom, we were actually creating chances in the latter part of last season, weren't we? I mean, it was an increased rate of chances. The quality of those chances weren't necessarily amazing. And you have to think that Odegaard was there during that period. So bring him back. Let's hopefully see the chance creation go up again. Jahan says, Tom, isn't Antonio Conte available? Shouldn't he be the Kroenke's main target? I very much doubt, even if we moved on Arteta, we'd get Conte. I think he would clash with the executives. Not to say I wouldn't want him. I'd love him. But I just don't think we would get him. I don't think he would want to come to Arsenal, to be honest, whatsoever. Real says, Tom, do you still think we need a goalkeeper and a right back after seeing? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Real. I just don't think we're going to get a right back because we've got so many options. I mean, it tells you how bad the right back options are for us when we take off our right back and when we've got 3 options of right backs on the bench in Bella and Cedric and Maitland-Niles that we bring on Tavares. That's a concern. And that's not, by the way, that's not a criticism of Arteta's tactical changes. That's not for me saying like Arteta did the wrong choice, because arguably Tavares is a better option than those 3. It tells you how bad those 3 are, that the level that they're at, that we bring on the backup left back over 3 natural right backs. So yeah, I didn't think that was the wrong choice, to be honest. It was just, it showed how bad the options were off the bench. Lewis says, would you play Holding over Marie? Possibly. It's not a bad shout, actually, to play Holding over Murray. I know typically we want a left-footed left centre-back, but Holding is good physically. He also used to be a left centre-back. Holding, despite being right-footed, used to naturally be a left-sided centre-back. You used to have Per Mertesacker on the right-hand side, and you'd have Holding on the left. So, yeah, I probably would. If Gabriel's not fit, I probably would start Rob Holding alongside Ben White. Absolutely. Peter says, Tom, do you believe Arteta is playing to the strengths of his players? Absolutely not right now. Matt Alexander says, genuinely have no enthusiasm to watch this team anymore. I'm bored of it all. Not worth it. Just feel so disconnected from the club. I do too, mate. I've never felt more disconnected than I do right now. And I think that's definitely kind of endemic of the fan base as well. South London's Finest Beast says, Tom, do you think we need an 8 and a 10? Yes, the centre of midfield did okay yesterday, but we lack creativity coming from different angles and areas, even though Arteta is poor. Yeah, I do, but I don't think we're going to sign a number 8. I think we'll get the 10. I think Odegaard will come in. I just don't think we're going to get the 8. I can't see us going for the 8. I think that Lokonga's, how good Lokonga has been, will have convince them that they don't need to bring in someone else. And that's the problem. Amandeep says, give this team to Brendan Rodgers and we would be scoring for fun. How long until Gabriel is back? He should be back after the international break. So after Chelsea and City. That's what we're hoping. He'll be back after the international break. CA says, we lack creativity, Tom. We don't have enough quality creative players to break the low. I disagree, CA. I think Smith Rowe is good enough to break the block. I think that Saka has got enough creativity to break that block. I think that Granit Xhaka can play passes into the box at times that break that block. And you need a better striker, and I think a better striker than Balogun. I think Lacazette certainly would have helped us if we were trying to do that. But I wouldn't even argue that Brentford were playing a block last night. I think that Brentford were gettable. I think there were times that we really got behind at Brentford, but we just didn't create anything of real quality in the right times. So I wouldn't say that it was a criticism that we couldn't break down a low block, because Brentford weren't playing a low block last night. That is for sure. So I just think for me, it's all about the system. It's all about the style of play. It's all about the way that the players are being told to play, and that's what's costing us. And I don't know how. And I keep doing these transfer shows every day, and we will keep doing them. I don't know what we can do to change things with players. I really am not sure, because I think that the team we have is better than what we're seeing. I think the team that was put out last night is better than what we saw. And so, that for me only points the finger in one main direction. And we all know what that direction is. And that's the reality of the situation. I really do. And I had a couple of discussions with people last night on social media about people that were still kind of keeping the faith. And that's fine. Like, I respect the opinion. If you want to stick by Arteta and you want to say, look, I think he'll turn it around. I hope he does, always, absolutely. And that's always going to be my school of thought, is to hope that things turn around, because that's to the benefit of Arsenal Football Club. But my analysis of the situations, I just don't see how it is going to. And I don't quite get the point of view of kind of keeping faith. What is making people keep faith? I don't quite know at this moment in time. If you are still very much behind, I would love to know why. Maybe we can do a phone-in show and get some people with that mind on, so you can try and educate me as to why you've got that reason, and vice versa. Maybe we'll sort something out. Anyway, that's going to be where we finish off today's show, guys. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. As always, really appreciate where you have joined us from, wherever you are, and the fact you've joined us after what was a very, very disappointing evening last night. Hopefully, the worst thing about this season is no European football is we've got to wait like a whole week until we play another game, and then that game is Chelsea with a Romelu Lukaku up front. So, oh God, goodness me, this is going to be a long season, and we're going to be here for all of it. So, thank you ever so much, guys, for tuning in. Absolute pleasure to speak to you as always, and as always, up the Arsenal.